Welcome to June's Power Luncheon. Thank you for coming to the Crosspoint, folks. I just wanted to give a special thanks to our sponsors of the Power Luncheon today. Richard Bruton of Bruton Investment Group, thank you so much for your support. Richard, with your support, as well as with the Net Campus Ministry, you have allowed us to complete the video production for this month, as well as throughout the years. Thank you so much. So folks, be encouraged and inspired by today's guest speaker, founder of Life 100.3 Central Ontario's Christian radio station. Scott Jackson is going to share today about the surprising nature of God leading after life. And so now, lead singer of the Christian rock band, The Eighth Line, Scott is going to unpack a lesson on what God can have in store when you least expect it.
Well, this is partly my testimony as a Christian, and as Sean said, the transition from going from radio into a rock band. So I'll give you my testimony. I'll keep it brief because I know many of you have heard it before. I grew up in Toronto. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. It was a positive home, but it wasn't a Christian home. I met my wife in grade 7. She was my girlfriend, and she's here today, Janice. Met in grade 7. Grade 7 people, come on. That's amazing. Thank you. I went to Humber College and took the radio course. My first job was in Peterborough, working at CHEX. It was a part-time job on the weekend. I wasn't on the air. I really wanted to be on the air, so I kept applying to other radio stations. And my first job was in Kingston at CKLC. I started there in 1978. I was 21 years old at the time, I think. I was so lucky to get the job because it was an amazing radio station. So then I moved, I'm going to jump over the whole Kingston thing, 7.5 years. Moved up and down the dial, kind of like on WKRP, up and down the dial from town to town. It was a bit like that. Moved out to Saskatchewan, moved to Kapuskasing. Moved to Kapuskasing to be the boss because nobody wants to go to Kapuskasing. So I went, okay, I will. And so I could go up there and make mistakes and not get fired. And everything went according to plan. Then I was transferred to Pembroke. And Pembroke was really good. It's on the Ottawa River. It was a great place to raise a family. I had a boss that let me do anything that I wanted to do. So that was kind of fun. And that's where Janice and I got saved, was in Pembroke. The way it happened was our daughter Crystal was, how old were you? 5 years old, maybe? About 5 years old. And she was playing with a little girl across the street. Her name was Eva. And Eva invited Crystal to church on a Wednesday night. And so Crystal came to us and said, is it okay if I go to church? And we said, on Wednesday? Is the church even open on Wednesday? It's only open on Sundays, right? But there was a program called the Awana program. Some of you guys maybe have heard of the Awana program. So when you're in the Awana program and you have a team, and then you get points for you get points for your team for doing different things, for memorizing scripture verses, or for bringing a friend to church. So Crystal looked at my wife and I and saw 2 points, bring 2 friends to church. So you do anything for your kid, right? So we went to church and we found that people were kind of different. They were friendly, they were positive. There was this something else about them. And about 6 months went by and we were at the pastor's house for dinner, and Janice and I committed to Christ together at that time. And I'm so glad we did it together because I found out afterwards that when this one spouse becomes a Christian and the other one doesn't, then there can be some tension. So we said it in unison together. It was wonderful. So then from Pembroke, I moved to, where did we go? North Bay, Sudbury, Nashville, Toronto, and then back to Barrie. So down to Nashville, that was where I learned how to do Christian radio. I learned about listener-supported radio, got to meet a lot of the artists, made a lot of connections in Nashville. But what God showed me was that with Christian music, it represents the core of what people believe, which is Jesus. And when you listen to Christian music, you hear about things like salvation, of course, and forgiveness and hope. And people want that reminder when they turn on Christian radio. That's what they want to hear. Christian music is the only music that is defined by the lyrics. Like if you listen to classic rock, then you're going to hear those big power chords from Led Zeppelin. If you listen to disco, then you hear like people want to dance. If you listen to country music, you get the twang. But when you listen to Christian music, it's the only music that's defined by the lyrics, by what it says. And if you were to take the lyrics off of Christian music, then it could be really any format, any kind of pop format. So I found down there in Nashville that people give money to the radio station during their share-a-thon because it means a lot to them. It guides them every single day. It reminds them when they wake up what their whole purpose is. So that was my story in Nashville. I moved to Barrie, and I had no job when I moved to Barrie, so I moved in with my parents, which was very humbling. I was 40 years old. I had 2 kids that were near teenagers, and here I am living on Codrington Street with my parents. So I'm trying to give you the short version of the story. I didn't want to go back into secular radio. And there was no Christian radio to speak of in Canada. It was just in its infancy. The CRTC had just started to license Christian radio. So I was thinking, what do I want to do? And I applied for some non-radio jobs, and I didn't get any of those. And I kind of scratched my head as I was doing it because I love radio. So I decided to combine my faith with my experience in radio. And I thought, well, I'll just start a radio station. I can't say that God placed it on my heart. Maybe he did. I just was putting 2 and 2 together, and that's what I came up with. And so I called my friends in radio, asking them how do you buy a transmitter? Do you go to Canadian Tire, line aisle 4? They have transmitters. How does this work? So I had some friends back in radio who kind of guided me through the process of going through the CRTC, and that worked out pretty good. Just before I had filed the license, but the radio station hadn't been approved yet, and I wanted everybody to know what was going on. Christian radio is coming to Barrie in Simcoe County, and so I went to my pastor. And I was attending Bethel Community Church, which is where I attend now, my first church, and now I'm back there after all these years. And my pastor at the time was John Howard. Maybe some of you people know John Howard. And John said, okay, listen, if you want to get everybody to know about this Christian radio station, you need to go to the CBMC guys and ask them if you can speak and share your story and get everybody excited. So I shared the extended version of my testimony. Some of you guys I recognize. I know you were there back then. And so I was sitting at the table, and I was nervous because I wasn't a public speaker at the time, although I'm still nervous now. But anyway, I was nervous and thinking, okay, I'm going to tell them about Nashville and growing up in Toronto, blah, blah, blah. And my buddy that was sitting next to me said, what, Christian radio? And I said, yeah. And he said, that'll be a tough nut to crack. And my enthusiasm went like that. And I had to get up and speak 3 minutes later. And he just shot me. So I got up to speak anyway and put on a smile and shared my testimony. And then I sat down, and there was dead silence. And then Arch Brown, who many of you know, stood up, and Arch said, this guy here, he's going to do it. And I thought, I am? And Arch says, do you know why he's going to do it? Nobody's saying anything. And Arch says, because he's got tenacity. And I thought, when I get home, I'm going to look that up. I have no idea what that is. And then Arch sat down, and everybody applauded. And Simon Celester was sitting on the other side, and he said, you got Arch Brown's approval. This is going to be big. And so then it kind of went from there. And to wrap up that part of the story, we signed on the air in the summer of 1999. Soon after, we applied for repeater stations to broaden the signal, which got us to Owen Sound and Peterborough and Huntsville. And then soon after that, we applied for a power boost for Barrie, because when we signed on, it was 1,800 watts, and it kind of went from there to there. And so we got the power boost up to 40,000 watts. The cool thing is that I filled out the application, and we never had to go to a hearing for any of them. The CRTC rubber stamped all those applications. So that kind of told me that, okay, God's with me. God's with me when we do this. So what has God shown me in all of this? all those years in secular radio were to prepare me to start a radio station. It gave me connections. It helped me to have vision. And the big thing I learned was if you don't know how to do something, ask people smarter than you, and they will help you to make it happen. The last thing I learned in starting the station was don't let somebody steal your vision. And since my friend told me it was going to be a tough nut to crack, last week I wrote a song called Tough Nut to Crack, and it's all about that. All right, new chapter here. 12 years ago, I was diagnosed with depression, and depression came on me really fast, just like an avalanche. The trigger would be if somebody cancels on me. So we're going to get together for lunch. There was a specific luncheon that I remember, and my buddy called me and said, "Hey man, I can't make it today. Let's reschedule." And I went, and I started to cry like a 13-year-old girl, and it was just out of control. This was starting to happen almost every day, and I was becoming unpredictable. My personality was unpredictable. I knew something was wrong. Janice knew something was wrong. Went to see my family doctor, and he said, "Okay, well, you probably have depression. Need to send you to a psychiatrist, but I can put you on. I can put you on Prozac if you want." And I said, "Why are we whispering?" Because people that take Prozac, they think that they're crazy. And I said, "I'll take anything. Give me the Prozac." So I tried that. It didn't work. I eventually settled on Wellbutrin, and I've been on it every single day for the last 12 or however many years it's been. And I took my meds today, so everybody here is safe. You don't have to worry. When I do get depression, I am lucky that I can sleep it off. If I take a power nap for 10 minutes, the depression is gone. When I go to sleep at night, it's usually gone the next morning. Everybody I know has got depression. Who has depression has it worse than me. 50% of the population at some point in their lives will have depression. So I imagine I'm speaking to a few people who are here today. So what has God shown me? God has shown me that with this depression, I got off easy, and my compassion has grown for people. Before, if there was peculiar people, I would kind of turn the other way. I wasn't good with peculiar people. And now I know why they're peculiar. Either they have some sort of a mental illness, they're on meds, they're not on meds, they should be on meds, they skip through meds. But there's a reason why people act peculiar. And before, it was just, get me out of here. I didn't care to understand. Well, I retired in 2020. Now, when you retire, you're supposed to have a plan. Like an exit strategy, somebody who will be your successor. So I did that in life, and Steve Jones was kind of waiting in the wings. He'd been there almost as long as I had been. So it was kind of a natural that Steve Jones would take over, and Steve's at the back somewhere. Wave at the back. Okay, that's enough attention for you. In the case of life, it was like fully staffed. We had a street team going out in public. We were supporting Canadian artists. We were connected to all of the churches in Central Ontario. All I needed to do was hand it over to him and leave. 2 years before I resigned, I gave away all my jobs. So for the last 2 years, I really wasn't doing, I shouldn't even say that because David Mann is sitting here. I really wasn't doing a whole lot of work. And one day I woke up, and this happened really quickly, probably because of depression. And I just decided that's enough. And I had done 21 years of Life 100 on 3, 42 years in radio, and I felt like I've said everything I have to say. I've taught everybody I want to teach. I've done enough share-a-thons. I just don't want to do it anymore. Like, radio is an awesome business. Christian radio is an awesome ministry, but I just wanted to do something else. If the timing had been different, COVID happened, was announced 2 weeks after I had resigned. I gave 2 months notice, by the way. If I had known COVID was coming, I probably would have stayed, because sometimes I felt like that I deserted my team. But that's the way the plan came out. So I spent a year of thinking, because I didn't have a plan for retirement. I wrote a book called There's Never Nothing Going On. Steve Bradley, who used to work on the station, gave me the idea. And it's a book about leadership. I wrote 30,000 words. It's done. I just need to put the chapters in order. And I just stopped one day. And I put it on the shelf, and it's still sitting there, all dusty. I was thinking, what do I really want to do? What is in my bucket list? I've had some amazing things in my bucket list that I've been able to do over the years. But the one thing that was left was, I want to record a song. I mean, I've gone into radio because I can't sing. I can go into radio and MC concerts. I can book concerts. I can be a friend to the industry. I can play music on the radio. And that kind of took the place of it. And I forgot about it for like 40 years. It was just like way down in the bucket list, kind of percolating. And so with nothing to do, I thought, I'm going to record a song. So I picked a song that I really liked. It's by Elvis Costello. It's called Blame It on Cain. And I called my buddy Andy Horrocks in Kitchener, who runs a full-time studio, does Christian music full-time, or did. He had since retired. And I said, could you record me? So he said, okay. I went down and recorded the song. And I loved it. And as I was recording it, I thought, I wonder if I can write a song. So I wrote a song, and then we recorded that. And then I started to record a full album, and I had to tell my wife. My wife was the bookkeeper at life, and she's the bookkeeper at home. It's like, okay, I need some money. We're going to record an album. And did that, and released an album a year ago. So what has God shown me through all of this? God has shown me that if you delight in the Lord, he will give the desires of your heart. And this has been my desire for all these years, and I forgot about it. And the door opened, and I did it, and I completed it. So then it turns out that I'm in a band. Like, I formed a band, recorded an album. We're doing shows. Like, I'm in a band, man. This is crazy. Like, I'm 65 years old, and I'm in a band. So I wrote a song. This one was called Squeaky Wheel. And this is a pretty personal and important song. I don't know if I'll get through this. So our son, Brett, and his wife, Gretel, live on the West Coast in Seattle. And Gretel called us on a Friday, 3 days before the birth of our granddaughter. And she said, the doctors can't find my baby's heartbeat. Would you pray for us? And so, like, we're praying, and she posted on Facebook, and, like, everybody's praying. Everybody's praying. And Brett calls us the next day, and he said that Brooke was stillborn. So, how does that happen? We're all praying. Nobody is praying against this. Why is he letting a baby die? So we were originally going to go to Seattle to celebrate the birth of our granddaughter, and instead we had to go to Seattle for the funeral of our granddaughter. So I wrote this song, Squeaky Wheel, and I'm trying to find my notes now. And the Squeaky Wheel is a song about unanswered prayer. So we can all relate to that. God, where are you? And when this happened, I talked to my Christian friends who were smarter than me and said, so, like, why did this happen? And I didn't get any answer that satisfied my soul, but I figured out one thing, and I put this in the song. I don't know why it happened. I don't know why a lot of stuff happens. The older I get, the more questions I have, but I still believe. I have questions, but I still believe. And so I wrote this song called Squeaky Wheel, and it was played on Christian radio stations across the country. So that's what God showed me. He also showed me that when I'm wondering about the answered prayer, maybe God has answered all of my prayers. And I'm telling God to answer it like this, and he's answering it like this over here, and I'm not paying attention. I wonder how many answered prayers I've actually missed. I wonder how many blessings I've missed because I wasn't paying attention. I want to tell you about my wife who's sitting here, Janice. We met in grade 7. You already applauded for that. That's cool. I know, I understand. That's grade 7. 42 years we were married, and so she was diagnosed with arthritis quite a few years ago, and she is immune compromised. And so when the grandkids are going to come over, we're asking, are they sick? They can't be sick because she doesn't have an immune system. She had health issues for 2 years. She had sepsis 3 times. If you don't know what sepsis is, it's pretty nasty. She had kidney stones, a bladder infection, and a UTI that were going on simultaneously. I went to a city event, a church event, and somebody laid hands on me and gave me COVID. So on my computer, it pops up, red, COVID. I don't know how many of you have seen that. It's like, wow, COVID. So I told Janice, and her words to me were, what chance do I have? Like, I'm going to get my wife infected with COVID, and she's got no immune system. So she puts on a mask, and she says, you eat it that end of the table, I'll eat here. And I said, it's the same air circulating, you know that, right? I'm going to wear my mask, okay, fine. You sleep on the couch, okay. And we did this for a week. And then I got over the COVID. She took off her mask. She never got COVID from me. In all this time, she never did get COVID, and she's immune compromised. So what has God shown me? God has shown me that I can be giving thanks that my wife has never gotten sick from COVID. So her condition lasted a couple of years. She was in the ambulance twice. She went to hospital 3 times. The last time she went to hospital last summer, I thought that she wasn't coming home. During this time, I was getting my act together because I didn't know if she'd be home or not. I was also working with the band. We were doing shows all over the place. We celebrated the first show with the band was last May in Aurelia. Janice couldn't come because she was so sick she couldn't get out of the house. And it was a big show. We had Tom Gibson, who maybe you guys know, bring production. That was really awesome. We were nominated for Rock Artist of the Year in all of Canada. That was kind of cool. We played at Queen's Park in Toronto, at Innisfil and Bethel and Barrie, and we worked with Teen Challenge. We've since released 2 albums, 5 singles, and 1 music video. And if anybody wants a copy of the CD, I have them over here. They're $10. The interesting thing about writing all these songs is that I can't read music. I don't play a musical instrument. I don't play piano. I can't play guitar. So I get a song in my head, and then I go to somebody and say, okay, it goes like, and they find the chords for it, and then we put it all together and take it to a producer, and they develop it with keyboards and drums and all the rest. So what has God shown me with that? I thought, has God dropped these songs in my lap? I don't think that. But I've recently found that God has given me this skill to write music and to write lyrics without knowing a musical instrument. And I think that God's given me the skill, and then I just kind of take it from there. Steve Jones is here today. He's the general manager of Life 100 Author. He took all the nonsense, he took all the job description from me, and he's having lots of fun doing it. And I was thinking a few months ago, so the board of directors call me and they say, Steve Jones has resigned. We need you to come back for a year. No way. I do not want to go back. I am big in retirement. I live on the lake. I've got my dogs. I like to look at the lake. I don't want the responsibility of Life 100.3. It was great for all those years, and it's in great hands. And the people that I hired, I taught them how to do radio. So if it's not in good hands, it's my fault because I'm the one that taught them how to do radio in the first place. But Life 100.3 will always be the cherry on the top of the cake of my resume. Nothing will ever come close to that. It was a huge part of my life for all those years. And as my wife told me the other day, I will always be the radio guy. But now my band is the 8th Line. You can hear us on Life 100.3. You can hear us on Spotify. Did I mention that I've got CDs of both of the albums over here? I did mention that? Okay. You can book us for a show for your company. If you're having a party at home, a house party, we do house parties. So what has God shown me through the 8th Line? The active lesson in my life right now, and maybe this will be advice for you, is just when you think your best years are behind you, God will do something new. Thank you for listening. God bless.